And when we talk about finding focus, focus can mean multiple things. It can mean a literal visual focus on a certain thing, perhaps on the horizon or in front of you. It can mean the way that we focus on each other in conversation and relation with each other. It can be the focus of a life. What is my intention? What is my purpose? Why am I here? All those big questions that we either try to answer or avoid. And when we talk about finding focus, I find it helpful in any of those manifestations to start with focusing on what is right in front of me here in this moment. What am I doing? Where am I standing? Where are my feet? Now, my feet are on some beige carpet in some black shoes in a lovely church building with all of you, and I can go on and on from there. And this is a mindfulness practice. My favorite book on mindfulness was a big starting point for me in learning to find focus in my life. This is The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. And very early in the book, page 3, actually, he goes right into a key mindfulness practice in a section on washing the dishes to wash the dishes. So Han says that there are two ways to wash the dishes. One is to wash the dishes in order to get clean dishes, and the other is to wash the dishes in order to wash the dishes. And he recommends the latter. Because he says that if we cannot be present washing the dishes, paying attention to the plate in our hand and the pattern on the plate and the way the suds look washing over that pattern on the plate and the weight of it in our hand, then if instead we are thinking of the cup of tea that we might be drinking after we finish washing the dishes, then by the time we get to the cup of tea, we won't actually be enjoying the cup of tea either, because we'll be thinking about what we need to do before we go to bed, or that project waiting for us at work, or how to get the kids to school in the morning. And we won't ever actually be present with the cup in our hands, or the plate that we're washing, or the task in front of us. And so when I learned how to wash dishes this way, it changed my entire relationship with dishwashing. First of all, the first time so I grew up with an automatic dishwasher. I had that privilege until I was 14. And my parents had just divorced. My mother and I moved into a rental house, and we did not have a dishwasher. So she taught me how to wash dishes by hand, and that became my chore. Now, if you know anything about teenagers and chores, you know that they have a polarizing relationship. And so Mom used to joke that her dishwasher did not work. Now, this remained true until I was in my early mid-20s. It was in my mid-20s when I discovered the miracle of mindfulness. And from then on, I never had sinks full of dishes waiting for me to spend an hour decrusting and scrubbing and so forth, because I would do them as I went, as a mindfulness practice. And that translated to the way that began to translate to the way I approach the rest of my life. The spiritual practices that I engage in inform the way that I approach my life out in the world, not just in the moment of meditation or reflection or prayer. And so when I start off focusing on washing the dishes, I find it easier when I finish washing the dishes to sit down and focus on the sermon that I'm writing, or the conversation that I need to have with someone, or a decision that I need to make. It clears my mind and allows me to focus on this moment. And that's one of many things I've learned from washing dishes in a mindful manner. Another is that single tasking prevents breakage. So we talk a lot about multitasking in our society. It's something that, was a big buzzword, especially in the early 2000s, around, things that people wanted in an employee. Must be able to multitask. Well, I haven't heard a lot about multitasking in the last couple of years, and I think it's because we finally figured out that multitasking means that you don't actually do anything well. Because if I'm trying to do 5 things at once, none of them are getting my full attention, and I miss things. And this is true in washing dishes. If my mind is off somewhere else, I'm more likely to drop a plate and break something. And this is true when I'm at work or with my family or here with you. If I am focused on something else or not focused on anything at all, how can I be present with what I am doing, and how can I be fully engaged with you? So focusing on one thing makes it easier to focus on others. And focusing on this moment allows me to focus on that big vision, on that horizon line to which I am heading. Because I'm not saying focus on this moment at the expense of the future. Forget about the future. Because we have to have a dual focus. I have to have a dual focus. In order to get where I'm going, I have to know where I am, and I have to be able to look at the road ahead. What is that horizon line? What is that goal point? And am I moving toward it? If I'm too focused on running from one thing to the next, I may find that the next is leading me over here when my goal was over here. And that brings me back to a conversation that I had with Carol Sissel, who you may recall came and preached for you at least once last year and hooked me up with my first preaching gig here. So thanks to Carol for that. We were having a conversation when she first came to Tulsa and I was first starting seminary. I was about 3 weeks into my first semester, and we were getting acquainted, talking about call stories, all those things that ministers do when they get together. And I was telling her everything I had going on right then. I was working a 40-hour-a-week job at Youth Services of Tulsa, which I very much enjoyed. It was very emotionally investing. I had just started my master's program, just shy of a full-time course load. I had not one, not two, but 3 major lay leader commitments at All Souls. And apart from that was trying to, find time to take care of myself and maybe have a social life here and there. And sleep. That's nice too. And so she's listening to me talk about everything that I have on my plate, and her brow is getting furrowed and furrowed and furrowed. And finally she says, "Stephen, how full is your glass right now?" I happen to have a glass right in front of me. And I said, "It's probably about this full." She said, "That's pretty full. You realize that's not a lot of splash room." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess not. I mean, a couple weeks ago it was a little fuller. I ended up dropping a commitment because I realized it was too much." She said, "Well, that's a good start." She said, "See, I like my glass to be about this full, so that I have room for more new things to come in and old things to flow out without things overflowing in the meantime. Because I can't, if I have a glass that's too full, there's no room for new things to come in, and the water gets stagnant, and I don't have anything to give anybody else." She said, "What I learned in my early seminary career was that anything that I was doing, even if I was busy, anything I was doing needed to be moving me toward that larger goal." And so she said, I would encourage you to ask yourself if the things that you're doing right now are moving you toward where you want to go. And I had been wrestling with a similar question already, because it became clear to me on my first day of classes that it was going to be very, very difficult to maintain that 40-hour-a-week emotionally investing job with what is essentially a full-time course load and definitely a full-time whole self experience of going through seminary. And 2 days later, I was sitting in my manager's office, my supervisor's office. I called a meeting with him, and I handed him a letter of resignation. I said, "I can't be fully present for this job, and you need somebody who can. And you deserve somebody who can do the job to the best of their abilities, and I deserve to focus on what I need to focus on right now. And I could do both of these at the same time, but I couldn't do either of them well." And I thanked him for the experience and the opportunity, and he thanked me for being forthright with him. And he hired someone who really needed that job, who was perfect for that job, and she's still in that job and doing wonderful work. She's able to focus fully on getting out in the community and recruiting new sites to go out to for teaching, which, if I was focused in every spare moment on the 300 pages of reading I had to do for church history that week, I would not have been able to do. Which brings me to my next point about finding focus, is a tool that I learned a few years ago, and that was my ultimate test of that tool, was learning to say no so that my yeses are more effective. Now, what does that mean? Learn to say no so your yeses are more effective. It means that if I say yes to everything, I very quickly find myself in a position where I can't do any of it, where I'm rushing from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, like Martha, and I'm missing the point. Not only am I missing the point, I'm too busy to even look for the point, because I'm just reacting. And if I say no to things that I can't do, or maybe I don't really want to do, or maybe I'm not the right person to do, I make it much more effective when I say yes, and I can fully commit to that yes. Another tool I use in learning to say yes effectively is, how much yes is this? Is this a real yes? Is this a heck yes? I feel this yes in my gut when somebody asks me to do something. Yes, I want to do that. If my feeling is not heck yes, then I might not be in the right. I might not be doing the right thing if I go forward. In fact, I've tested this a lot, and I found that no is pretty easy. If somebody asks me to do something, I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. It's pretty easy to say no to that. But if I get asked to do something, I'm like, maybe, I guess I could do that. I probably shouldn't do it either, because I'm probably not the right person for the job, and I'm probably not going to do it well because I'm not going to be fully present with it. Now, sometimes, we have to do things that we don't want to do, and, like doing the dishes sometimes, or taking out the trash, or, all the things, all the little things and big things that we have to do to sustain ourselves, or keep our home clean, or maintain our relationships with people. But when I have to do those things, I want to be clear that I'm choosing to do them for the right reasons, and I'm choosing to do them at the right time. So I have a couple of criteria for when to say no, when to say maybe later, and when to say yes. I already told you about yes. If it's a heck yes, I'm going to do it. But saying no is scary, right? Because I might disappoint you. I might make you mad at me. And in the people-pleasing culture we live in, that's kind of the worst possible thing, right? To make somebody mad at you. And if you're anything like me, it can be very hard to see the look of disappointment on someone's face when I tell them no. But what's even harder is when I see the look of disappointment on someone's face when I've told them yes and I can't follow through. And what's even harder for them is when I tell them yes and I can't do it at all. Which is not to say I have to do everything perfectly, but it is to say that if I say I'm going to do something, I need to be sure that I am capable of doing it. So my criteria for when do I say no, there are two. One is, does this add genuine joy, value, and purpose to my life? I picked this up from a blogger named Adam Baker, who runs a personal finance blog called Man vs. Debt, and he was talking about streamlining your finances and your possessions to focus on what you really want in your life. This applies on a spiritual level. It applies on an organizational level. We can ask ourselves these questions as a church. We can ask ourselves these questions on whether we're talking about a book on a shelf or a relationship that might have run its course. Does this add genuine joy, value, and purpose to my life? And if the answer is no, it probably doesn't need to be there. It definitely doesn't need to be there. If the answer is maybe, it probably doesn't need to be there. And I at least need to consider it very hard. And then the other criteria is actually a three-parter. It's, does it need to be done? Does it need to be done by me? And does it need to be done right now? Now, if it needs to be done, well, somebody's got to do it. And if I'm the right person for the job, then I should do it. If you're the right person for the job, or if your skill set is better than mine, or if I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this done in the time that it needs to get done, then maybe we need to talk about who else can do it. And if it doesn't need to be done right now, if, say, I can wait to take out the trash until tomorrow morning because I need to go to sleep right now, and that's more important so that I can get up on time and get my day going, whether it's something as simple as that, or on a larger scale, maybe I don't need to go back to school right now. Maybe I need to get a few more things cleared out in my life to make space for that, and then I can go back to school next year. Yeah. So this applies on the small decisions and the larger decisions. So what does this mean for us as individuals, and what does this mean for us as a church when we talk about finding focus? So again, if I focus on where I am right now and really pay attention to what I'm doing and how I feel about it, it tells me a lot about whether and how effectively it's taking me toward my larger goal. And we can ask ourselves these same questions as a church. Are the things that we're doing here and out in the community adding genuine joy, value, and purpose to our lives and the lives of others? Is what we're doing, does it need to be done? Is somebody else already doing it? Does it need to be done by us? Are we the right people for the job? And does it need to be done right now? Or is there something that's more important or more urgent that we should be focusing on at this point in time? And these are living questions. These are questions we can be asking ourselves in our personal lives. They're questions we can be discussing at coffee hour and at our potluck afterwards. These are the big discernment questions that determine how effectively we're moving toward our focus and how clear we are on who we are and what we want and how we can be of service to this world. And that's all I have for you.